Hi, welcome back to CS170. Just wanted to kick off things for this week. Have some admin stuff, maybe some review of Excel, and then we'll pick up on to the new topics. So here we are. I have student schedule open right now. And you can see we basically have finished up this section here with the Excel, and we're on to week 13. We're talking chapters 11 and 22, which is basically just some of the social implications of technology, and some of the kind of challenging issues that are out there right now that people are trying to grapple with. So that's for this week here. And I guess just in terms of like where we are now, we're obviously pretty close to the end of the semester, so we'll be going into finals. There will be different things that people are trying to wrap up to review. We're going to open up the quizzes for some of you that might have missed some of the quizzes. But it's only going to be open for like a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, and we'll give an announcement as to when exactly that happens. But it's fairly close to the end of the semester. So for some people that might have missed the quizzes, that's an opportunity for you to catch up on that. You know, any extra credit stuff, you'll be working with your TAs for their extra credit. Most of you have been sending me your emails throughout the semester. Probably next week, I'll start to review all of the email submissions, group them, and allocate extra credit from my side. So you start to see those pop up. So I think really for like this week and for next week, if you look at what you did for exam 1, exam 2, and then obviously more recently with the Excel stuff, if there's things that you're having problems with, make sure you let me know. And if necessary, I'll try to cut another video. Do take advantage of the lab hours or the office hours that are posted up there from the various TAs. You're not restricted just to go to one particular TA. So the whole schedule that's published out there for you is accessible to you. So do take advantage of that. You'll start to see like the course reviews and stuff like that. And as I mentioned earlier in the semester, those things are pretty important for us to get feedback, for us to see how we can improve the course for the next go around. So make sure you do try to get the feedback in on that. And separately, you can send me emails with suggestions on what we can look at, not just even to finish out this semester, but for future sessions of this class. So do take some time to feed us back your suggestions, and we'll take that into consideration and try to continue to make the course better. Okay. So let me see here. So I did update as usual here on my page here. You can see all the different weeks, and then now we're down here. I've added the resources. As I start recording these videos, I'll start to add some more sections down here at the bottom. Okay. Let me see here. So that's covering that. So here we are. Okay, so we're basically on this first part, we'll be talking about the social implications of IT. But very quickly before we get into that, just get into some of the Excel review that we did from last week. A couple of people mentioned they had some problems creating the pivot table for some reason, or maybe even just a regular table. So do keep in mind that you want to try to have essentially like almost like a square or a rectangle clean set of data, right? So what I mean by that is you can see all these different things here, right? Ideally, you just have like, row after row, like all of these rows here with all of these fields filled out, all of these cells with information. in a proper way, right? So no blank rows, no blank columns. Don't, kind of add in things like subtotals in between. Um, make sure the column names are unique. Make sure, oops, uh, make sure, your top part here is clean. There's only one row. Um, so make sure you have all of that. And then when you do actually do it, you only click on the one cell, right? We've kind of said this a couple of times. Make sure you're only selecting one cell. Otherwise, Excel just kind of freaks out. It's kind of a weird thing, but that's just what it is. So you just select the one cell. It figures out what the range is based on the fact that you have a clean set of data, like all of these rows and stuff are filled in. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Check that out. Let me know if there's some problems doing that for your pivots or your regular tables. So if you've been doing the assignment or you've been playing around with pivot tables, this should look familiar to you, where you can select any of these type of attributes here. Just hit the checkbox, and then you can apply either as filters or set them up to be columns or rows. And then you can do the sum. It could be like the count, or it could be sum, or it could be average, or whatever on your sigma here. Okay. Here, this refers to the table. Again, similar type of thing to the pivot, and but maybe a little bit less restrictive on how clean it has to be, right? So you still have to select the one cell here, but some of the other things in terms of like the unique column names, although I'm not really sure why you would have the same column name multiple times, you know, it doesn't necessarily break, let's say, a table or like a data filter, but still good practice. So with this is a table, like I said, similar criteria, but basically you remember for the table, you can apply these filters up here, and this kind of makes it kind of easier to read by having these banded rows. And then at the bottom, you can play around with the different subtotals and whatnot. So, this is just another way for you to kind of slice and dice or look for data in a large data set, hopefully, right? A small data set, you don't need to go through all this, right? But for a fairly large data set, you can see like the rows here, you're looking at like thousands, right? This is like 13,000 or so. Okay, so if you're looking at a lot of records, being able to do things like filtering and pivots and whatnot are pretty important. Okay, and so one last thing before I actually kick off into here, I'm going to just show you, because maybe some of you don't really grasp, how you might be using Excel. But I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the Excel session is it's something very common. If you look at like HTML, you look at the JavaScript, it's kind of more like if you're doing something kind of like, let's say you're doing e-commerce, or you're doing something to, like say you're working for a company and you're doing things within a fairly large group of people. You're trying to share information, those type of things. You're going to be doing stuff on the web pages probably. Okay, so that's where those parts come in. But when you look at Excel, it's kind of, it's not always the case, but most of the time it's kind of this something where you as an individual are doing something. You're modeling something, you're managing something. So there's like a whole bunch of different things that if you look at them as an application, you can build into Excel on your own. Okay, not to say that that's really the ideal thing in the long run, but most people when they're at home or they're working on projects or whatever, they can use Excel to do a lot of different things. So I'll give you one example here. So let's say I had this like property spreadsheet here, and what you would do is you would have something like this, right? So basically it's a whole bunch of records here, and then That's your inventory. I always call these things the details as inventory. And then here, you can see right here, you can do like this sum, right? So I'm basically trying to pull the details into some sort of summary view by category, right? So in this case, we're doing it like for all of the entries that have a property of this name, and for these categories like rent or whatever, right? And then for these time periods, okay? So in this case, this is like all of 2020, and you can see the very familiar thing, right? Sum if, right? So here's the range that I'm going to sum, which you can see it's the entries, right? That's the details. And then I'm going to match up each of that criteria. So you can see here's the criteria. This is the property, this is the categories, interest, and then this is the category as the time bucket, right? You put those three things together to pull out all of the entries. And sometimes obviously with Excel, it's kind of free form. It's easy to make mistakes. You can see there's like a whole bunch of tabs here, right? It's easy to make mistakes. So you put in little things like this at the bottom where you kind of try to sum up all of the details and do sort of like a cross check to see if you're missing any of the entries. So little things like that. But hopefully this kind of gives you some idea of the different things you can do in Excel. You'd be amazed how many different things people have come up with to put into Excel. It's just basically like a whole bunch of things. Like it could be all of your customers. You put all of the information in there. You're trying to like, identify, segment your population. You want to see, how to do payroll. There's people that do payroll on their Excel spreadsheets. There's people that manage their budgets off of their spreadsheet. There's a whole bunch of different things you can work off of with Excel. So, from a personal productivity standpoint, a lot of you, when you go into whatever fields of business that you're going to go into, or even just to manage your own personal finances or your own personal business or whatever, you're going to find yourself very familiar with Excel. Or some variation of that, right? Could be Google Sheets or something, right? But that type of thing is very common. So not all of you may go into e-commerce or may go into like publishing things from a social media perspective. But I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to have to end up doing something with Excel, no matter what field of business you go into. So I just kind of share that a little bit of insight with you. Anyway, I've kind of spent enough time on Excel. We're done with Excel. Let's go feed into social implications of IT. Okay. So, I think this is trying to present like sort of like a balanced view of Excel, not Excel, of technology, and trying to talk, well, okay, we talk a lot about the positive things about technology, but there's also some challenges, right, that we have to kind of manage, right, for technology. And all of this is covered in your resources and your reading. So do make sure you read that. So when you look at, how you're studying for the exam, I think for the Excel stuff, it's fine. We show you all the different examples in the video. If you drop into the lab hours or whatever, hopefully, all of the mechanics of doing the various things within Excel for the scope of this class should be covered. When you get into stuff like this, sort of like at the beginning of this course where we're talking about some of the history of technology, this social implication standpoint, I think it's going to be important for you to read the book, right? So all of the different things that they cover in the book, pretty much that's going to drive what's going to be on the exam. So you do want to be mindful to kind of read those different aspects that are covered in the book. It will be important. Okay. But I'm going to try to cover, and it's more of kind of a discussion at this point here. Okay. So, this is one of those things like, okay, we talk about this in a room. Obviously, we're not in a room where I'm doing asynchronous lectures with you. But basically, it's talking about, almost like a general poll for all of you in terms of like, where's technology sit in your life, right? Has technology improved or not improved. You know, your I wouldn't say your relationships, I would say more of your engagement. Um, it could be your family, it could be your social circle or whatever, right? And I realize that right now things might be in a sort of a unique situation given like where we are with COVID and whatnot, where in fact the technology, at least in my experience, um, has been the enabler, right? Otherwise, I guess we're kind of all sitting in our house or wherever we're living, um, not doing much at all from a social standpoint, right? Being able to connect with others, right? I know it might not have happened that way for everyone, but um, you know, I think in light of the current COVID situation, that technology has been an enabler that has been different from anything in the past that we've had, let's say way back when we had the Spanish flu, um, you know, or any of the other significant events that have caused us to have to lock down the population. So, you know, not all of it has been great or positive, but, you know, I think in my opinion, that's kind of how I look at the technology. Um, and so, you know, this is all in the context of like, yeah, for everyone, you'll find cases that where you know technology has been great and you know taken them further than they would have without the technology. In other cases, you know, technology has not been a great thing, and there's been some bad things, and we're going to go into a little bit of that. And those are challenges basically, and we'll have to, it's an ongoing thing on how to deal with these type of challenges, and it's an ongoing, it's constant, right? It's constantly changing the environment depending on how the technology advances. Yeah, so this continues on with that question here. All right, so the first thing is there's the idea of crowdsourcing, right? And this is the idea where there's a whole bunch of people that are out there. They all have various interests, but for whatever reason, like they want to contribute into a particular effort, right? For whatever reason. Maybe it's just because we made it sort of like a game and people want to play it like a game. They don't realize that while they're playing the game, they're actually helping achieve a certain outcome. It could just be like they want to do something for the benefit of others, contribute their knowledge, contribute their labor, whatever, right? So these are a couple of different examples here. Probably like maybe one of the first, it's not really the first, but one of the first, um, and kind of the most referred to uh, type of crowdsourcing is Wikipedia. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. Like you just do a Google or whatever on a particular topic, chances are Wikipedia will probably come up. Now it's not perfect, and we'll kind of go into some of those different types of things, but it's one of those things, and they always, if you look at it, you'll probably see a lot of examples or references to it about things like, you know, they used to have things called encyclopedias, where, you know, there will be a publisher, let's say Britannica. They would have people go out, put all this information together, they would make it look pretty, pictures, all of that kind of stuff. They make these things and they sell it to people. And that was their business model, right? And they were, I forgot how much those things were, but I guess those things weren't that cheap, right? To put those encyclopedias together. And then along comes something like Wikipedia, where it's this idea where we all have a lot of information, right? There could be people researching different topics. There could be people, you know, very knowledgeable in all kinds of different topics. And they'll all contribute. And it's not a free for all. There's like a gatekeeping process, you know, so there will be people that will review these. So you can't just publish anything that you want. But assuming that this is something that is part of like a group thing, like a group of volunteers, you know, it tends to um, improve the quality of what will actually be out there. And it got to the point where it's essentially comparable or even better than like the old way of doing things with encyclopedias. Okay. So there's that idea with something like Wikipedia. Okay. And then we'll go into some of these other things you can see. There's a Be a Martian type of thing. So they have different things where obviously you probably see we have the things that have landed on Mars right now, and people are being engaged. It's kind of going to a different topic right now, but if you go into like things like machine learning and whatnot, so all these images are coming back, and it's a lot of images, right? And it's not like the computer will automatically figure out what these things are. So you have this idea of like people helping the machines to learn by tagging things. And that's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of manual work, actually. So people like NASA try to engage the wider population to do things like that. I kind of look at it in some sort of way as some sort of gamification, right? And I think we can talk a little bit about gamification in a bit too. Um, it's one of those things where people want to do something, right? So they all come together. It's leveraging like the know-how, the labor of a lot of people to produce something useful. And again, that's all based on this idea of like the internet, and basically the connectivity that technology is providing right now. So everyone can just jump in there and work together to produce like something of value. Okay. Uh, you know, Linux, Apache, that's basically operating system. Well, actually, Linux is operating system. And a lot of people are doing stuff on that from essentially kind of a corporate level, like a server, like if you're doing stuff on, very large group type of efforts, like those type of machines are generally going to be running Linux, right? So when you're running on your local computer, you're probably running things like, Mac OS or Windows on your phone. You're doing Android or whatever. But at a corporate level, at a large scale level, a lot of those machines are probably running Linux. A little bit slimmer, a little bit more trimmed down from an end user perspective, but then it's more heavy duty to process large amounts of data or CPU at scale, right? So it's just a different focus, right? And so that's what Linux is. I won't go much more into that. You don't really need to know that. Probably a lot of you know Waze, right? Again, it's one of those things like everybody is kind of driving around. They contribute into it. That helps the wider population, whether it's like traffic or speed traps or whatever, right? All that kind of stuff. It's the wider population communicating with each other, sharing their knowledge to help everyone else. Okay. And an open office, right? So you have those type of things. This is all under the category of crowdsourcing. Okay. I'm sure you can think of other types of things where through technology, generally, let's say through the internet, people are working together to produce something of value, hopefully for the wider population. Okay. So sort of something related to crowdsourcing is the idea of crowdfunding. Okay. So this is the idea of like raising money to do different things, right? Whatever initiative it might be for charity. It might be sort of like a microfinance type of thing, whatever. So let's say Kiva, right? So it's almost like, you go out there, you look around, and even if it's a small amount of money, but whatever it is, there'll be other people on the other side of that who are looking to borrow money, right? And just like when you go into eBay or Amazon or one of those type of things, there's a lot of things that are built up around reputation and and whatnot. So it's almost like peer pressure to kind of keep people to honor whatever. In this case, it's a loan, right? So if you see someone that, you know, they're have a good rating, that, you know, you feel comfortable that, you know, you can lend them some money and they're going to pay you back on a timely basis, whatever, you know, you feel comfortable to make that type of loan. And so this is something that is kind of like breaking the traditional model. Number one, you know, probably like a lot of banks or a lot of institutions wouldn't be lending money at that level to like someone who needs to borrow like $500 or something like that. You know, they probably don't have like credit rating. They, you know, it's all kinds of stuff where, you know, they would be challenged to go through the traditional means to borrow money. And so something like Kiva, and there's other platforms similar to that, it's essentially in the category of microfinancing, being funded by other people, right? Like individuals, not like a big financial institution, although there are financial institutions that are going into this space. But this is one example or an idea of like crowdfunding, right? You know, you probably many of you seen things like Kickstarter, right? So let's say you and I, we have like some awesome idea. You want to package it up, try to sell other people to help you fund that idea. You have things like Kickstarter, right? You know, maybe there's like a, you know, someone needs some money for an operation, or someone, you know, is down on their luck and whatever, right? Like sort of like a fundraising type of thing. You can do that here. Same thing with GoFundMe, right? So there's a number of these type of things. This is like, you know, just a sampling of those type of things. But if you were to, you know, search this particular topic, you'll just see a whole bunch of different platforms or a lot forums to be able to raise money for whatever you want, right? It could be for a new idea that you, or for a product that you're developing. It could be for like charity. It could be help out an individual cause, whatever, right? That's the idea of crowdfunding. Okay. I think maybe instead of making one giant video, I'm going to stop here, and then I'm just going to cut a new video to continue on with electronic payments. Okay. So I'll be back in a little bit.